Two new studies link daily marijuana use with a higher risk of heart failure or heart attack, especially in older users. Now, the numbers appear convincing. One study followed more than 150,000 people for nearly 4 years and saw those with daily marijuana use had a 34% increased risk of heart failure. As more states legalize recreational marijuana, as we saw with Issue 2 in Ohio this past week, what are the national health implications to this increased government-sanctioned use of marijuana? Here to discuss this, Dr. John Fleming, former congressman from the 4th District of Louisiana, who served as a deputy secretary at HHS. He also served in the nation's military as a naval medical doctor. Dr. Fleming, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Yes. Hey, Tony. Great to be with you again.
Thanks for taking time off the campaign trail as you run for treasurer in Louisiana to join us to talk about a really important issue. We've talked about this before. You've studied the harmful effects of marijuana for years. What jumped out at you from this latest study?
Well, this study really grabbed me because I'd seen nothing written about this, but I really felt at my core as a physician, as somebody who has treated a lot of people with lung and heart disease related to tobacco, that marijuana, smoking it, has got to be as dangerous, if not more so, than tobacco, cigarettes. And in fact, this study actually comes out, as you said, it's a very large study over a number of years. So there's no question now that the tar and all the toxic chemicals and everything that we find in cigarettes are also in marijuana as well.
Now, this comes, as I said, in Ohio, now we have almost 24 states that have recreational marijuana use. And this comes at a time when we have record deaths related to drugs, not marijuana, but fentanyl. And it doesn't seem consistent if we're concerned about drug usage, drug-related deaths, that we would be moving to make drugs more accessible.
Absolutely, Tony. It's a seamless process. And you may be aware that I wrote a book back in 2006 based on the premise that the earlier a child is exposed to addicting chemicals, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, whatever, the studies show clearly that the brain becomes imprinted on these addictive substances, whatever they may be, and they have a much higher risk of ultimately developing alcoholism, drug addiction, whatever. And the rates of addiction have been going up progressively as we become more relaxed about access by children, young adults to these addicting substances. We're having more and more problems, and the drugs are more and more powerful, which is why you see the zombie effect that we see today on the streets of San Francisco. So it's bad on the addiction side, it's bad on the health side. And you've heard me talk before about the other problems that we see, hyperemesis syndrome, where people can't stop throwing up, acute and chronic psychoses, including schizophrenia, much higher percent. And even among young people, they've measured that from teen years to the early 30s, they lose 8 points in their IQ.
So Dr. Fleming, one of the talking points, if you will, of those that are promoting the legalization or decriminalization of marijuana is that, hey, it's just like alcohol. Let's just go ahead and legalize it and let's tax it. So what would you say to that? Do we know that alcohol, I mean, there are hazardous effects to it as well, but is that really an apple-to-apple comparison?
No, not at all. There's a huge social cost to recreational and even medicinal use of marijuana. And what we see evolving today is big marijuana. Now, what does that mean? Let's go back to the 60s and 70s when we found out that people were dying right and left of heart disease. My dad died at age 43 as a chain smoker. My mother at age 56 of colon cancer. Both of them were chain smokers. And so what we found was people were dying prematurely. And as a result of that, there were investigations, and big tobacco, as you recall, they all claimed that they couldn't find any addictive effects at all of tobacco. And later that was proven to be wrong. And then we had these big tobacco settlements. Well, big marijuana now is replacing big tobacco. It's a big business, and people are making a lot of money on it, and they're doing it at the expense of our young people. And the taxes that are coming in from that is far below projected levels, but it doesn't come close to taking care of the health and psychiatric problems that develop as a result of these drugs.
Yeah, I was going to say this is going to lead to big government, because as we now say that health care is a right and government is going to provide it, this is only going to make it more difficult to ration what care, or it's going to lead to the rationing of the care we have because we're increasing the problems. Dr. Fleming, we're out of time, but always great to see you again. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Great, Tony. Thank you once again.